Recording started.
Good morning, everybody. You could hear us whispering back there while we were waving. Welcome to No More Mondays, the podcast where we believe you can have a thriving career or business and an amazing life on your terms. As always, I am your host, Angie Callen, and this episode is brought to you by The Modern Coach, my platform for helping humans adapt to the future of work. If there is one thing that we have learned around here in 200 plus episodes of No More Mondays, it is how important core values are to creating that thriving career and business. So if you are ready to grow with purpose, head on over to themoderncoach.co/core values and start figuring out what matters to you. Enough about me, enough about The Modern Coach. On with the show. One of the reasons I started this podcast all those episodes ago was to have real conversations about career and life ownership and not the stuff that gets wrapped up in HR jargon. And that's why I am super excited to introduce you to somebody who has made it his mission to help people stop drifting around in default and start designing a future of intention and satisfaction. Andy Storch is an author, keynote speaker, and host of multiple successful podcasts. You might know him from Own Your Career, Own Your Life, or maybe from his new book drop, Own Your Brand, Own Your Career, co-written by recent guest Mike Kim. But beyond those books, what I love most about Andy is how deeply personal and practical his take on modern work really is. You're going to find out how cut from the same cloth we are as we dig into what it means to live with intention as this future of work begins and keeps changing faster and faster and becoming more uncertain than ever. It's going to be a good one. Andy, welcome to No More Mondays.
Angie, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so glad that we connected recently. Like, we hit it off right away. We do have so much in common. I love talking with you. I'm excited for this conversation.
You also win the prize for most interactive read-in. You had that book ready to queued up at the perfect moment without even knowing it.
That's right. They're always on the desk. They're always on the desk.
We love shameless plugs around here.
Hey, I'm all about marketing. I got the poster behind me. You know, it's all about branding over here.
Don't worry, mine will be up soon. Oh, first teaser of that on this podcast. Let's just leave that out there for everyone as we start getting into, I really want to pick your brain today and share some wisdom with everybody because we have some shared perspectives, but as we know, it takes different voices for them to be heard. And I really want to dig into this idea of drifting. I refer to it as default. So different D words, same concept. Yeah. And I know it showed up for you, which is how you kind of started realizing this happens. And I'm wondering for just a little backstory on where your experience with drifting occurred and how you realized that's what was happening.
Yeah. So I had a meandering career and did a lot of drifting myself, working in a lot of different jobs, trying to figure out what I wanted to do and starting to learn over time about my strengths. And I got very lucky at some point in my early 30s. I got a job with a consulting firm called BTS, and it gave me an opportunity to travel all over the world running workshops for big companies and working with a lot of executives, leaders, managers, people in different roles. And I learned a lot. I was running workshops on things like strategy, business acumen, leadership, things like that. And I learned a lot about business and what great leadership looks like. And I met lots of people and I observed a lot of people who were really kind of drifting through their careers. Again, something that I had done in my career earlier as well, operating in reaction mode, waiting for someone else to tell them what to do or where to go. Usually their manager, could be someone else. I know this is something you're really familiar with. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with this. It doesn't mean that people can't be quote unquote successful, right? Move up the ladder, make more money, get that bigger title. But also a lot of people, it seemed to be looking around, almost wondering kind of like, how did I get here? And never really taking control of that career and being intentional with where they're going. And then as I went on my own journey of self-discovery, personal growth, which started in my mid-30s, and starting to try to truly build a career around my strengths, things that I really wanted to do. For me, I was drawn towards entrepreneurship. I wanted to be running my own business, doing something that I loved, but I also worked with a lot of corporate clients. And you would hear these podcasts as I'm getting into this, and people say like, if you don't like your job, you need to quit the 9-to-5 and start your own business, right? And what I learned from talking to a lot of corporate employees that I worked with is that not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur, but I think everybody does want to feel happy and fulfilled in the work that they're doing. And I've found that while there's no guarantee that we're going to achieve the goals that we set out for, the more ownership we take, the more intentional we are, more fulfilling that journey is. And so I put together a framework based on all the stuff that I went through, which became my first book, Own Your Career, Own Your Life. And I've been on a mission to teach and inspire more people to follow that and truly own their careers since then.
Love it. I once had someone refer to what you described as drifting as a career tumbleweed, which I think is like the most visually appropriate version of this. Just kind of, I don't necessarily have an intention. It doesn't mean my career is going poorly, but I'm just kind of floating around in space. I'm coasting versus consciously choosing a path. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that word intention, because I think that is such an important thing that we don't necessarily focus on. And it comes back to, you said something I wanted to point out too, in conjunction with the intention piece. And that is that, yes, you can be successful making more money, climbing a ladder and getting the title, but that doesn't always align with fulfillment and satisfaction. And in fact, sorry, everybody, a lot of times it is directly disproportionate.
Right.
And that's where this idea of intention means. So I would love to hear a little bit from you about what that actually maybe means in practice, a day-to-day context, or how do we lean into this idea of maybe being more conscious than coasting?
Well, I think this idea of intention, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's really just the idea that you are conscious of the choices you're making and how the work you do, the way you live your life, the way you spend your time, and you're doing those things because you have chosen to do that versus you were just waiting for someone else to tell you what to do, or you're doing what you think you need to be doing, what everybody else is doing. And I'm not one of those people that says like, oh, society's trying to blind us and like, you need to like follow your own path. But I really do think so many people are not really being thoughtful about how they're living their life, how they're operating their career, and just thinking about how you're spending your time on a daily basis. I think about it all the time. There's so many trade-offs involved in every decision we make with how we're spending our time. Just look at us talking right now. This is a great use of our time, but both of us could be doing other work. We could be going to the gym. We could be taking a hike. We could be spending time with family. You could be calling a friend. You could be scrolling social media. You could be responding emails. We could do lots of other things, right? But we've chosen to spend time talking with each other and hopefully sharing this to help other people. And it's just really about being conscious and saying, here are the things that I want to achieve in my day, in my week, in my career, in my life. And I am going to do these things, X, Y, Z, do the work to achieve those things, to live this life that I want to live. And it doesn't mean it has to be what everyone else deems to be successful, right? And I used to struggle with that because I'm very ambitious and I felt like, oh, I need to move up the ladder and do these things. And I have a brother who all he wants to do is listen to music and hang out and is not that concerned with like, moving up the career ladder. And the thing is, he's really happy. So who's winning? Like who's more or less successful? The person who is like driving themselves crazy, trying to move the ladder, the person that says that's not important to me and is still paying their bills and they're getting by living the life that they want to live. So it's like, what is the life you want to live? What's the career you want to have? And as I always say, owning your career is about designing a career that's really personal to you, because some people do want to move up and become CFO one day or VP of operations or whatever. And lots of other people, if they're honest, will tell you, I have no interest in ever managing other people. I just want to be valued and rewarded for the work that I do and be home for dinner with my family every night and ski or mountain bike on the weekends like you do.
There's so many little good nuggets in there. The big thing, in my opinion, is none of what we've just outlined, music loving, make enough to play music, or work yourself up to C-suite. Neither of those is right or wrong or better or worse. I think the really important point is taking the agency to define what you want. And what I have found is most people don't do that. We accept the kind of like status quo. We accept that maybe climbing the ladder is the only option that will make us look successful. And we have kind of accepted that corporate America defines success for us instead of us taking control and having the intention of like, this is what I want out of my life. I'm going to design or find or build the career that supports that, versus the other way around, which is how most people do it. And then we just have this like mediocre autopilot thing going on.
Yeah.
And then we get to mid-career, which is lots of people I've talked to that are like, oh, do I want to keep doing this same awful thing for the next half that I have for the last half? So at some point we get an awakening.
Where am I
but
going?
I think the point that we're trying to make is maybe to shake your little eyeballs open sooner so that you have more life of satisfaction versus feeling like you had to live it in the margins.
Well, and the other thing too is I work with a lot of big companies, and a lot of these large corporations in the United States, especially now, are becoming a bit flatter, less hierarchical. I'm hearing the leadership and the HR team saying, hey, we want people to think of their careers more as, rock climbing than a ladder, because the ladder's not as available. There's not as many promotions available, but there are lots of different ways to grow by taking on different assignments, learning different skills, becoming an expert in certain areas. And a lot of these organizations are now saying we want to become quote unquote skills-based organizations. They want to be thinking about the skills people are developing. So this is where you, especially if you're in the corporate world, can start to be intentional and be thoughtful about what skills do I want to develop? What things do I want to learn? What do I want to be known for? What do I want my expertise to be? And of course, you want to think about what are you most excited about? What are you most curious about? But also what's going to be most valuable in the marketplace, right? Those things are important as well. You may love painting, but it may not be valuable anywhere. But if you're really curious about learning about AI or social engineering or marketing or something like that, there's tons of opportunities in that space.
I love that you are talking about the change in the corporate landscape, because years ago, I want to say this was probably in my baby coach years, and I was a newbie. I fired off this blog post about the different definitions of career growth that actually exist versus the climb the ladder, make more money, take more responsibility, get a higher title, ladder, singular ladder, that corporate America has set. And it is still one of the number one SEO referral sources into my website. Wow. All these years later, I read it, I cringe because it's not very well written compared to the voice I have now, but the concept resonated obviously with individuals. And it's encouraging to me to hear that even though there is a lot of change, negative in some ways, there is this little silver lining that now there are more ways to grow inside of these companies, and they're starting to kind of realize that, because I feel like it took a little while for them to catch up and start bridging that disconnect.
Well, and things are changing so fast as well. From a technological perspective, every company is going through some type of transformation. We have a chapter in our new book, Own Your Brand, Own Your Career, about entrepreneurship. I know you interviewed my co-author, Mike Kim, the other day. And this is the idea that you don't try to you don't stick within your defined role, but you look for problems to solve. You look for ways to add value to the business. And this is something that's going to become more and more valuable in organizations that are shifting all the time. So many companies are telling me when I talk to the learning and development team that, our top priority now is getting everybody using AI. And before we started recording, you and I were just riffing and sharing how we're using AI in our businesses, right? You could be that person inside a larger company that's testing things, going to other groups and departments. Hey, I figured out how to solve this problem with this. And it has the potential to make you really valuable within that organization. We're getting a bit into building your brand and your value as an employee, but this goes back to that intentionality and owning your career, because you don't want to sit back and wait for things to come your way. You want to be thinking about what's next, where are things going, how can I provide value, what is the type of work that I really want to be doing, and what actions can I take now to start moving toward that and building up my experience, building up my expertise, building up my brand.
Well, this is perfect, because I actually want to talk a little bit more about personal brand. And I want to put it in context, because I think it's easy to understand how branding looks as a business or even as an entrepreneur, because you are, out there trying to sell your wares, for lack of a better term. But I completely agree with something you said earlier, that entrepreneurship is not the answer to career satisfaction for everyone out there. Yeah. I test that you're kind of either wired for it or you're not. And entrepreneurship is a really great way to kind of straddle both worlds. But as we get into more of this kind of career space, how do we start to define our personal brand? What is brand ownership, career ownership, and how do we begin leveraging it in a real, meaningful, intentional way that isn't just, I have a polished LinkedIn profile?
Right. Yeah, that's the key. And so many people think that it's just about building a social media presence or getting followers or even LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is certainly a part of it, an aspect. Look, it starts with the foundation to owning your career. The foundation to owning your brand is in self-awareness and really using self-reflection to build self-awareness. I know it's a big part of what you do with clients as well. Like, how can you know where you're going if you don't even know who you are and where you are right now and why you're there and what you like about it and what you don't like about it, right? So I always recommend, and it's something that's missing for so many people, taking that time for self-reflection, sitting down with a cup of coffee or tea and a notebook and a pen or pencil, and just writing down what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, the things that you love doing, that you hate doing, your energizers, the things that really light you up, your values, the things that you really care about. What do you want to be doing more of and less of? Who are you? And what are you maybe known for today? If someone were going to introduce you, right, in a meeting. And then the next step is to start to think about, what do you want to be known for in the short term, in the long term? And when I ask people, like, what do you want to be known for? It could be adjectives like hardworking, high integrity, ethical, collaborative. It could also be expert in customer service, marketing, automation expert, right? Accounting expert. What do you want to be known for in the marketplace? You know, for me, I want to be known as someone who is helpful, kind, generous, inspirational, motivational. I'm a keynote speaker, right? It fits in with what I do. I did this workshop once, and one of my clients and friends told me he wants to be known as someone who can get things done. He basically wants to be known as really reliable. So there's an important project on the line. The boss knows that if he gives it to Anthony, that Anthony will get it done. He's always there. He's always reliable. And so he's always going to be valuable to the business. Other people have told me high integrity is really important to them. Collaboration is important to them. Whatever is important to you, what do you want to be known for? And how do you want people to introduce you in meetings? And then once you've defined that, and it's an ongoing process, you can start asking yourself on a regular basis, am I showing up in alignment with my brand? Right? I said I want to be helpful, generous, kind. Friday afternoon, I look back at my week. Someone asked me for help. I ignored them. I focused on a project. I didn't answer emails from anybody. Like, was I really living in alignment with my brand, or did I just say that? Okay, maybe there's some adjustments I need to make. And then you can be thoughtful, start to be more thoughtful about how you're showing up in the workplace, whether you're physically in an office or working remotely with other people. We all know that, first of all, the quality of the work you do is like table stakes, right? I mean, you work with lots of clients, and you can like paint yourself this way or that way, but you still got to show up and do a really great job and have people recognize that. But then there's a lot of little things that can impact your brand one way or the other. Do you show up to meetings on time? Do you dress professionally? Are you helpful to other people? Do you collaborate well? I had an example when I talked about personal brand in my first book of, if you're going to hire somebody for a project and you're choosing between John, who has 15 years of experience, knows the subject really well, but he's really gruff and difficult to get along with. He doesn't collaborate very well. Or you have Jennifer, who isn't as experienced, but she's very collaborative. She's eager to learn. She's fun to work with as well, which factors into your brand. Like, who are you going to choose? Most people are going to choose to work with Jennifer unless the experience is really like the integral factor that's going to, you know, make the project or break the project one way or another. And so that's just a way to think about your brand and how you're showing up, because every time you meet with other people, you work with other people, you interact with other people, they're making micro judgments about whether they want to work with you again, right? And sometimes there's people you just have to work with, but we're always thinking about that all the time. We're having this call now, and I'm like, oh, I love talking with Angie. I can't wait to have that next conversation because of the way you carry yourself, the energy, how kind and helpful you are. And that could be the same for everybody you work with. We're thinking about that all the time. So how are you showing up and interacting with others? And then the last piece, of course, is your external brand. What does your LinkedIn profile look like? Do you have the professional photo, the headline? Have you taken time to customize those things? Talk about the work that you do, start to connect with different people. Do you share content from time to time? And that's a whole another subject to expand on, but you do have the potential to build a great external brand and thought leadership that way, no matter what type of work you do.
Well, and while that's a different ball of wax in a way, you can't get there unless you've done all the pre-work. And a few points I want to make. Andy and I really do talk about the same things, y'all. One, you have a brand, whether you know it or not, because when you walk into a room and you leave the room, they're saying or thinking something about you, whether you like it or not, and whether you've taken the time and intention to make sure you like what they're saying. And that's kind of what we're talking about.
Right.
Because there's also this idea of like personal branding really rolls up to marketing 101. And not only can you not define it for yourself if you don't know what's important to you and how you want to show up, but you also can't quite get there if you don't know the value that you're trying to provide, where you're going to,
Yep.
who you want to provide it to, right? You've got to figure out this audience factor. Are you trying to build a brand as an entrepreneur to clients, or are you trying to stand out in a competitive market? And on that front, thank you for validating something I have said to many a client, Andy, and that is, I've yet to be proven wrong on the following, and I feel like you just proved me right. That is that a company and a hiring team will choose the 70% qualified candidate who is a personality fit for the team over the 100% checks all of the boxes qualified candidate with a personality like a paper bag. Every single time, the personality, the culture fit wins out. And that's where the values and the what do I want to be known for really, really starts to connect in this personal brand. So the rundown of like how to think about personal branding, I think, is exceptional. And I encourage some of you to kind of go back and listen to that because there was a little bit of a checklist in there.
Yeah. How are you showing up? And look, I mentioned I worked in consulting years ago. We used to travel a lot for these projects. And one of the questions we'd ask when interviewing candidates was, would I want to be stuck in an airport with this person for 4 hours? Right? Because it's inevitably going to happen. And do I want to be there with them? Yes, they're qualified to do the work, but are they fun to hang out with? Are they kind? Are they, are they respectful? That sort of thing. That all factors in. I had a colleague also when I was there who came in a few years after me, hired out of an Ivy League school, really bright, really talented. But she had this tendency when we were in meetings in the conference room of taking her shoes off and people could smell it, right? And people started talking around the office about this, right? The look on your face is like, oh my gosh, it's true.
That's worse
this
than
happened,
salmon in the microwave, everyone. That is worse than salmon in the microwave.
Yes. Oh my God. That's salmon in the microwave, fish in the microwave. But, and a lot of people cringe when they hear this. And I tell the story because this woman, highly talented, intelligent, capable of doing a job, and could potentially tarnish her brand, her reputation, just by how she's showing up with this one little thing. Now, I was her mentor at work, so I was tasked with giving her the feedback.
You were the one that had to give the feedback.
I did. And of course she stopped, and she's, gone on to have a wonderful career. We're still connected. A small bump in the road in the grand scheme of things, but the potential to really ruin your reputation. I always share, like, for me, I know I do great work for clients. I add a lot of value with the work I do as a speaker and trainer, et cetera. I'm very good with people. I know my strengths, but I'm also not very detail oriented. I tend to lose track of time and show up late sometimes to meetings and things, right? And I share that because if I don't watch that has a potential to really hurt my brand and my reputation, especially if I'm working with a client who's very big on punctuality, right? I can be the best speaker in the world, but if I show up for our prep meeting, or God forbid, our actual speaking engagement 5 minutes late, which I haven't done, they're going to be like, I don't want to hire this guy again. This is, I don't care what kind of expertise he has. He's not showing up on time, or he's not dressing professionally, or whatever. All these things factor into our brand, and we need to be thoughtful about how we are showing up and interacting with others.
Now, something I want to talk about, because the list you went through is excellent for people to start kind of synthesizing this thing, but it also may give the impression that we've got to figure all of this out before we can take any type of step forward. And I want to be cautious, because I know you and I both do not, and actually probably assert the opposite, that you can start owning your path, even when it doesn't make sense yet, even when you don't necessarily know where you're going, even when the world's uncertain. So how do we do that?
Totally. Because it's a journey. The self-reflection and self-awareness is a journey. It's like enlightenment. If you say you're there, then you're probably not, right? Like, everybody thinks they're self-aware. We always have more to learn. We always have more to grow, and things are going to shift and change over time. So I'm really big when it comes to owning your career. You start with that self-awareness, and then set a vision and intention for where you want to go in your career, and then start to make a plan and set smart goals to get there. But of course, I know that things change over time. They have in my life as well. I went from working in the corporate world, wanting to work my way up the ladder, to starting my own business, to starting a family. I used to love to travel all over the place, and would go out of my way to go meet with clients. Now I've got 2 kids and I don't want to travel as much. Like, things change in our lives, of course, right? Our priorities change. Maybe our spouse gets a job in a different city. Maybe the company that we thought we were going to be with for a long time lets us go. We see that all the time, and we
That's a
need to make a
popular
change.
one.
Maybe the industry changes. Maybe AI disrupts the work that we're doing. We're seeing a lot of that these days. That's okay. We've got to be adaptable. And that's why I'm a big advocate of that, the sort of ongoing reflection, getting feedback, being thoughtful about where you're going, where you want to be going. But the important thing is that you're working towards something. When I talk about setting a vision, you may not know exactly where you want to be going in your career, but I've found the more clarity you have, the easier it is to make decisions along the way. When those opportunities come up, when those challenges come up, how are you going to respond? What's the work you're going to be doing? And the other thing is just to lead with curiosity, because things are changing all the time. So what are you curious about? What do you want to learn more about? What are you interested in doing? And hopefully it's not just because someone told you a thing and it sounded cool. That's how I changed my major in college. Somebody told me a thing and I was like, that sounds cool. I'll do that. I didn't know what else to do. Sometimes that's how we get into jobs and majors and careers, et cetera. But I think the important thing is over time, we become more cognizant, more aware, more intentional. We take more ownership, take responsibility and say, if it is to be, it's going to be up to me. And like wherever I'm going, I'm going to try to be intentional and in control of how I'm getting there. And of course, I'll ask for help along the way.
There's a whole, that's an entirely different episode that I believe that we could have, is asking for help. And there's so many cliches out there, and I continue to attest that they're cliches for a reason, usually because they're true. And I feel like the long and short of that is that the journey really is the destination, or the destination really is the journey. Right. And if you're open and curious and willing to continue learning, you don't necessarily have, when we say have a direction or know where you're going, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have like a latitude and longitudinal point on a map. It might be that I want to go to a country, and then I'm going to hunt around on that country and figure out where I want to live. Or it might be that I want to go on vacation to the Pacific Northwest, and once I get to the Pacific Northwest, I will start refining down where I want to spend all of my time. Right. So it's more of having a wayfinder than an actual pin drop necessarily, and that helps ease some of that pressure to have it all figured out.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you have a destination to work towards, but it doesn't mean that everything is about hitting that destination, because things are going to change over time. You reminded me of one of my favorite quotes from Ernest Hemingway, which he said, it is good to have an end to journey toward, but it is the journey in the end that matters the most.
Yes, right? It is. So true. That is so true. Ooh, I may need to, that quote may have a place in my future, but I think that's really true, because I've for a lot, and here's a really, really just like specific example of this. I talk to people, in the career and job search space who would say something like, well, I want to be a COO by the time I'm 35. That is a lat longe pin dot, right? That is a very, very specific goal. And what may happen while working towards that goal is that you miss an opportunity to be a CEO at age 33 because you had blinders on and tunnel vision towards this very specific goal that didn't allow for as much curiosity or flexibility in how you get to the goal. And I think that's what is really fun and interesting about this age we live in with AI, and the amount of curiosity that we can bring to our careers and our lives, and how much we can actually design what we want to have and be really, really creative with it.
I think it's really good to have those goals, those ambitious goals to work toward. I think the biggest challenge or problem is when people tie their happiness up to those goals, right? Like, what happens if you're almost there at 35, but you don't quite hit it? You're still, you're still 3 years away. Can you still be happy with your life? Or are you so frustrated and down on yourself because you didn't achieve this goal? Because we always put pressure on ourselves. We think that we are capable of doing more than we're doing, and we're letting ourselves down by not achieving certain things. Like, I've been there. I'm there all the time. But what I've learned is, like, we get to choose, we get to define what success is for ourselves. We get to choose happiness on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It doesn't have to be tied to achieving certain goals. You can fall short of your goals, but still recognize the progress that you're making, the work that you put in, and still be proud of yourself for working towards something, and keep working towards something, and know that, unfortunately, challenges are going to come up. My whole business was shut down by the pandemic in early 2020, and everybody was disrupted by that. When I published my first book, 2 days or a month before I published my first book, I found out I had cancer. I ended up doing treatment for that, and, putting all my marketing plans on hold, putting my plans to become a keynote speaker on hold. But eventually I moved past both of those things and achieved a lot of the goals that I wanted to achieve. They took a little longer than I thought they would, but I'm here now speaking to you as a author, speaker, entrepreneur, etc. All the things that I wanted to be.
With I'm even going to add something with the perspective of those challenges and working through them. Right.
Yeah.
Because I also feel that, along this journey that is the destination, it's not going to look perfectly. But I also feel that a lot of those experiences are the things that we need to be prepared and be fully equipped for the work that we're really meant to do in the way that we're meant to do it. And I want to think that you wouldn't be quite the keynote speaker in the way that you are had those experiences not informed the present.
True. And nobody really wants to hear from the person that's just like, yeah, my life is perfect. Look at this.
No, because no one's is. It don't matter what social media tells you, people. No one is. And if there is one life truth that we would like you to unlearn, it is that there is no such thing as perfect.
True. This is true. That's why I wrote a chapter in my first book about comparison, because it's something that we all suffer from as well. Right. And one of the ways to bring perspective to that is realize that nobody's life is perfect. Everybody has challenges. Everybody has overcome challenges. Most successful people you see, they weren't born that way. They overcame a lot of things to get there. And they still probably have challenges in their life that are dealing with that you don't know about. They probably made sacrifices to get to the place where they are. And then I'll usually say the next step is just to ask yourself, what can you learn from those people instead of just being jealous? What can you learn from them? And if it's nothing, then maybe you can just hide them from your feed and cut them out of your life. But there's usually something that we can learn, just like I learned some things from you before we started recording.
Yay. I did my job today. And also I think you can flip that inside of like, what could I learn about myself based on my reaction to different things, which kind of brings us full circle to this conversation around self-awareness and not being afraid to have it or to like lean in. So I think one of the best things that you can be curious about is yourself. And in this very, very seemingly connected, disconnected, distracted world, I think we lose sight of that. And that is the core to knowing what's important to you, what you value, and how you want to grow in your life and work.
Yes. Yeah. Look, I mean, I've been studying mindset for years. I love Stoic philosophy. I love this idea of leading with curiosity. One of the things I've gotten in the habit of doing is just asking why I feel a certain way every time and this is a great assignment for anybody. If you want to build your self-awareness, just the next time you feel frustrated, angry, disappointed, sad, just ask yourself why. Why do you feel that way? And is it even justified? I mean, all feelings are valid, but sometimes we're angry at other people because they didn't meet our expectations that we never communicated to them in the first place. We're getting into marital advice now. But
please stay tuned for Andy and Angie Have a Relationship podcast.
Yeah. You didn't wash the dishes. I didn't know you wanted me to wash the dishes, right? How often do we set expectations for other people? We don't communicate. But seriously, like we get so, the example I always give too is like when a car pulls in front of you in traffic, like really close, we call it cutting you off. And we get so angry at that person as if they were doing something personally to us, when in reality they were, they're on their way to a meeting. They were adjusting their hair, like thinking about something. They're not even looking at, they don't even know that you exist. They're not doing something to you. And we can choose to just slow down and say, oh, it's not a big deal. Or we can choose to get really angry, as some people do, and yell out the window. That's a choice. You don't have to act a certain way just because other people act that way. And that comes back to that curiosity, that self-awareness, that mindset part that is so important in building your career and your life as well.
Absolutely. And the big thing is when you go into this exploration, you can't fear what you're going to find out about yourself, because you will be a more whole, you might not like some of it, especially if you go into entrepreneurship. There is no better exploration into self-discovery than entrepreneurship. However, you have to be okay with what you find, and you will be a more whole and complete and informed human because of it. And I think this is a good time, Andy, speaking of the books that you have to help us do that, how do we find you and keep in touch with all of the amazing wisdom, humor, and storytelling you have in this effort to design the life and career we want to have?
Well, Angie, I'm all over the place. I've got these 2 books, Own Your Career, Own Your Life, Own Your Brand, Own Your Career. Both are available on Amazon. I've got a couple podcasts, the Own Your Career Show and the Talent Development Hot Seat. If you happen to work in talent development, learning and development, very active on LinkedIn, and my website is andystorch.com. Actually, I have some bonus resources for anybody that wants to dig deeper into owning your career. Maybe you don't want to read the whole book, a summary, as well as some questions you can ask when you face challenges. If you go to andystorch.com/bonus, you can download the bonus resources there.
We like bonuses. We will include that in the show notes For any of you who are listening while driving, please do not go to that website right now. But we'll be sure to load up this episode with all of the amazing resources and wisdom and places to find Andy, because this is an important conversation that is relevant to anybody out there, whether you're creating your work or working inside a company that's creating it for you. Knowing where you want to go, what's important to you, and what you value is a great place to start if you're asking the question about how to take ownership of your life. You have more control over your career and your life than you think. Take it.
That's true.
Mic drop.
Boom.
Actually, before we mic drop, let's give everybody one little piece of inspiration to send them on their way.
Okay.
What does owning your Monday look like for you now?
What does owning my Monday look like to me? Well, for me, I know that I would like to have a little bit of time to ease into the week, to plan things, to figure things out, to get some work done. And so I don't usually schedule many meetings, if any, on Mondays. I also don't schedule hardly any calls on Fridays. I keep most of those to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now, I am in a position where I run my own business and I can make my own schedule for the most part. If I'm trying to connect with an important client and their only availability is on Monday or Friday, I'm going to meet with them, right? But for the most part, I get to make my schedule. I get to be intentional with that. And I have learned and decided I don't want to have calls for the most part on Monday and Friday. So that's how I own my Monday. And if I'm doing things really well, I'm coming into the week. I start with a journal, some journaling in the morning, and writing down the most important things that I need to get done so that I can focus on doing those as well.
You give yourself time for you. And that's
myself
really
time for me. And if I'm honest too, like Monday morning is it's usually a bike ride. As you know, I'm big into cycling. So that's a good way to start the week as well.
We share a love of cycling, different kinds, but yes. I played hooky and rode my bike yesterday morning, and it was fabulous. Sweet. And so for all of you out there, what's a little step you can take, whether it's restructuring your calendar, whether it's take an extra bike ride, right? Pick an area and reclaim the agency that you have for your career and your life. And if you need a little accountability to do so, drop us a comment here on LinkedIn, if that's where you're listening. There's lots of places, like Andy, I am also everywhere. So find us. We would love to hear what you're working towards, and maybe even more importantly, how we can help. Andy Storch, thank you so much for being part of No More Mondays.
My pleasure, Angie. Thanks for having me.
This has been fantastic. I'm Angie Callen, and this is No More Mondays. One more big thanks to Andy Storch for reminding us that the best career path may not be a straight line, but it should be yours. Pick up his books, learn more, and I'll see you next week for another edition of No More Mondays podcast.